This is known as scaling, where the top portion of the asphalt wears away, leaving the concrete below. And it may be unpleasant to drive over, but it's the deep potholes that maintenance crews consider a priority. Despite the signs and what some are calling constant police supervision for nearly a week, people are still cutting through. So why are they doing it? Why are they crossing the road? Why else? To get to the other side. You know that you're not allowed to do this, right?
Yes.
How come you're doing it?
Because it's the easiest way to get through.
You know you're not allowed to do this, right?
Yeah, I know.
So why are you doing it?
Because I have to get to that street and there's no other way to get there.
City sources tell Eyewitness News they know cold patching doesn't always work. But if they can show that a pothole has been filled, even if that filler has worn away, the city is off the hook. And a little of this stuff, even if it's wasted, it's still a lot cheaper than having to fix a car. Now think about what Halsey just said. Maybe not that specific pothole.
Maybe not necessarily that specific pothole.
That begs the question, if the records aren't good enough to know which pothole was filled, how can they be used as the basis to deny claims? And another point, there's no centralized database to keep track of records or complaints.
You know, I have a filing system within my own email.
In Wake County, Halsey is that database. Ice on the sidewalk doesn't always look like this. Sometimes it'll look clear, but you don't want to assume that's the case.
Criticism is mounting over raises that House Speaker Thom Tillis gave his staff at the same time as he was crafting a budget that would put hundreds, maybe thousands of other state workers out of work. Tillis squarely defended that move today to our own Jon Camp. John's live at the Raleigh Eyewitness News Center with what he had to say. John?
Well, Larry, Thom Tillis is a business guy. He talks using words like run rate and net. To Tillis, these weren't even really raises. They were adjustments to salaries that were artificially low by design. But while some say that makes perfect sense, critics on both sides of the aisle say it was, at the very least, a political fumble.
I'm perfectly content with the numbers.
House Speaker Thom Tillis isn't at all apologetic about the raises he gave key staffers a few months after session started.
It's a business concept called a probationary period, where you bring somebody in at 75% of what their role typically pays until they prove that they're actually going to be in that permanent position.
But what that meant was 7 staffers getting raises ranging from $5,000 to $30,000.
If he thought that they were not going to be satisfactory employees, why would he hire them in the first place?
Doug Jackson is a bit of a ringleader among Tillis's critics. In fact, he started this website, telltillis.com, as an online petition, which hundreds, he says, have signed.
What we want is for him to give this raise money, the money that he ended up spending on raises, we want him to give that back to the taxpayers.
Not all critics go that far, but the criticism isn't just from the left.
Politically, it just doesn't work. It was a misstep.
Mitch Kokai with the John Locke Foundation says if nothing else, giving hefty raises to people already making 6 figures or close to it was a tone-deaf decision.
In some respects, in politics, perception is reality, and the perception was that, okay, you state agencies, you can take all of these cuts, but my people, they're going to be living high on the hog.
But Tillis says even after the raises, his staff still makes less than their counterparts in the Senate and on the governor's staff. And when we asked Tillis if he thought the raises or their timing was tone-deaf, he basically doubled down.
The only regret is that I didn't convince the governor and the other branches to do the same thing.
Now, coming into this year, Thom Tillis says that he would end it by having spent 15% to 17% less on his staff than his predecessor did. So far, he has spent more. But he stands by the claim, saying he will hit those numbers largely by ramping down staff in quieter times. And Larry, as you know, in a couple weeks after redistricting is over, it will get much quieter at the legislature, and we'll be checking in with the Speaker's office.
You will be all over it, I'm sure of that. Jon Camp, thank you for that story. An I-Team report is first at 6. Good evening, everyone. We are now 5 years into the experiment that is the state lottery. In that time, it has put $2 billion into public education, but some say that is much less than what was promised when lawmakers passed the bill. So, is the lottery working? Is it worth it? I-Team reporter Jon Camp joins us live outside the Raleigh Eyewitness News Center with that story. John.
Good evening, Larry. You know, since the education lottery started, it has taken in more than $6 billion. $2 billion of that has gone to schools. So is it working? Is it worth it? Depends who you ask. When was the last time you won?
Today.
You won today?
Yeah.
What did you get?
$60.
Brian Bunn is a lottery-playing veteran. He admits playing for the thrill, but likes the fact he's helping fund education.
It helps kids get more computers, books.
In fact, a little less than a third of Bunn's money goes to the classroom. The lion's share, 58 cents on the dollar, goes to prizes. That's $60 Bunn just won. 30 cents goes to schools. 7 cents to retailers, 3.5 cents to advertising and administrative costs, 1.5 cents to operating costs.
It's promoted in North Carolina as a way to raise money for public schools, and yet now less than 1/3 of all of the revenue raised goes for education.
Charles Heatherly is a former deputy state treasurer and has been a critic of the state lottery since it began 5 years ago.
The projections at that time were that, we'll get $500 million a year the first year on the lottery, and then we'll get $1 billion a year.
But last year, the lottery's best year yet, less than $500 million went to education.
To brag that in 5 years, the lottery's raised $2 billion for education. It's actually taken $6 billion out of the economy.
A spokesman for the lottery told us off camera that $2 billion is still $2 billion pumped into education over the last 5 years. But Heatherly questions who's spending that money. One study last year showed folks in 10 of the poorest counties in the state spending the most on lottery tickets.
The lottery exploits the poorest people in North Carolina.
But Brian Bunn says it's not exploitation, it's fun. A chance to make a little something extra and help kids at the same time, even if that help is less than what was promised.
Hope to win some money, and hopefully down the line, some of the money that's supposed to go to education will go there.
Now, Larry, one thing that the state has done is lower the percentage of the lottery winnings that goes to education. When the bill was passed, it was 35%. Now it's 30%. So whether that's a promise broken, clearly it is a change from how this was sold to the voters. Now, we talked to the lottery about this. Here's what they had to say. We try to find the right balance between what is paid out in prizes and what we can earn for the state, so we maximize the revenue for education. The idea here, Larry, if there are more winnings, then more people play, and if more people play, then ultimately more money will go to the classroom.
General Assembly might want to take another look at this down the road. All right, thank you for that, John.
Good evening, Larry. Very thick smoke here, so much so it's almost making it difficult to talk, a gritty feeling in your throat. Perhaps no better way to illustrate this problem than Raleigh's skyline. It almost looks like fog. It is not. But it wasn't just the smoke causing problems today. Because of it, hundreds of people were calling into 911 and jamming up emergency lines.
Yeah, it rolled in about 10:30.
Dustin Reed was out on the roads for his job all morning long.
It was pretty thick, actually. Pretty thick. You can smell it in the air and everything.
What Reed didn't do was call 911 to report it, which sets him apart from scores of other people.
I know somewhere around the 11 o'clock hour we received quite a bit of calls.
Doug Workman runs Cary's Communications Center and took more than 100 calls about the smoke.
And a lot of them are just making inquiries, where is the smoke coming from, what is it all about, things like that. And they're mostly just concerned that the area around them is not on fire.
3 areas were on fire, none of them close by. This wildfire burning in Pender County was first blamed for smoke blanketing the triangle. Around 4,000 acres down near Camp Lejeune, sparked Friday night, likely by lightning. We're also told a long-burning wildfire in Dare County and a controlled burn at Fort Bragg contributed, winds carrying smoke from all 3 to the triangle, making for sometimes spotty visibility on the roads and causing potential health problems for people with allergies and asthmatics. For some, it was too much. Parents we talked with changing plans to keep their kids out of the smoke.
We won't be outside this afternoon, no. This is uncomfortable. So when they get home, we'll be playing inside or something like that. We won't be playing outside.
We don't have any official measurements to know if this is getting better or worse, Larry. All we have to offer is the power of observation. But what I can tell you based on that is we have been on this story all day, watching closely. This is what we've been looking at. And it doesn't seem to me to be getting any better. Not much wind right now anyway, and right here to blow it out of here. Larry, it looks like we may be in this for a little while longer.
This is thick as I've ever seen it from a fire down east. Thank you for that, John.